Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast with Auburn men's basketball coach Bruce Pearl is brought to you by Compassion International. For $38 a month, you can make a difference in a child's life by releasing them from poverty. We've talked about Compassion so many times here on the podcast. We love what they stand for. We love having them as partners with us here at Sports Spectrum, and we want to encourage you to check out the website, compassion.com/sports spectrum. You can see when you go to that website a list of children waiting to be sponsored and an opportunity for you and I to spend $38 a month to provide food, education, medical care, vocational training. All of it is done in Jesus' name, and it's an awesome chance for you and I to be an example really to our families, to our friends, to our children, to show that we can release a child from poverty and make a difference in helping others. That's what Compassion International is all about. And this is your chance to do just that. Go to compassion.com/sports spectrum and consider sponsoring a child today. Today in the podcast, we welcome Bruce Pearl, Auburn men's basketball coach, to the program. And if you follow the Auburn Tigers basketball run this year, they made it all the way to the Final Four, their first ever Final Four in 2019. And their season ended on a sour note, losing to Virginia in the Final Four. A real tough loss. That game, which Sports Spectrum and myself were at in Minneapolis, saw Tennessee with a lead late and then a foul called with under a second to go. Virginia made the 3 free throws and ended up advancing and then won the national championship. And so the Cavaliers are the national champions. But what a run it was for Auburn. And I remember after that loss to Virginia, how Coach Bruce Pearl responded. And I asked him about that in this podcast, but I just thought he responded with such poise and integrity and openly shared about his faith and the plan that God had for him and his team. And it really kind of made me sit up in my chair a little more straight hearing him talk about his faith. And that was something that he kind of openly started sharing even more and more as the platform got bigger in their run to the Final Four. And so I really wanted to talk to Coach Pearl, especially now a month or so removed from the Final Four, about that run, but even more about his faith and the transformation that God has done in his life over these past few years. And this is a man who grew up in a Jewish household and is now finding out that a relationship with God is something that has really grown deeper for him over these past few years. And it was interesting to kind of have him share his story. He was so transparent and so open about what he is wrestling with right now and seeking and trying to discover his purpose and who Jesus is and who God is. And it was a fascinating interview to me. So take a listen to Bruce Pearl, Auburn men's basketball coach, joining us here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Coach Pearl, welcome to the podcast.
James, great to be with you.
It's good to talk to you, Coach. And, let's start, I guess, with basketball. It's been over the last month or so that your team made their first ever Final Four. And I just wonder, now that it's been several weeks and you have a chance to ponder and kind of look back, what stands out about that run now that you've had some moments to kind of look back and see how things have progressed to the point where you were able to make that Final Four?
You know, you are on a run. It's and it's not a weekend. It's like, 5 or 6 weeks. It's March Madness. And you got to get hot at the right time. Especially for a team that, while we're a top 25 team talent wise, we're not a top 10 team. And you absolutely feel blessed. You feel like it's part of God's plan. You got to completely trust which way it's going to go in victory or defeat. And you share it with the people that you love and the people that you count on every day, the people that tolerate and put up with you. I mean, me. And so it makes it really special. And then, the Final Four is sort of, for college basketball, that's kind of it. Yeah, the national champions are forever going to be the Virginia Cavaliers. But I think being at the Final Four is a great accomplishment, and it's something that you'll wear, really for the rest of your life.
And I know you're such an emotional coach, especially in game, and there's so much fun being had on social media with some of the faces you were making. I watched you on some interviews with ESPN and others, and it was wonderful to see because it just means how intense that time is and how emotional and just kind of into the game that you are. Can you describe your emotions and what that's like trying to coach and keep your sort of emotions in check as you're trying to navigate a basketball game?
Yeah. James, I had a great teacher, Dr. Tom Davis, who taught me the game at Boston College, Stanford, and the University of Iowa, where I was his assistant. Yeah. When I then became a head coach, Tom gave me some advice, and he said, listen, be yourself. You can't be me, meaning Dr. Tom Davis, and you ought not to. Now, if you want to teach what we taught, if you want to play the way we played, that's fine because it's what you know, it's what you believe in. But don't try to be somebody that you aren't, because he coached differently. Yeah. He had the same intensity or passion. He just didn't wear it on his sleeve every possession like I do. And so as long as I understood that, I took it to heart. So all I am is authentically being myself and understanding that for better or for worse, that is kind of what it is. And, I don't know that I deserve any credit for it, and at the same time, I don't apologize for it.
Well, one thing I really watched, and I remember last year too, when Virginia had lost that heartbreaking game as a 1 seed to a 16 seed, and you saw Tony Bennett stand up with an incredible amount of poise and integrity in terms of handling that loss. And then I watched you in a similar fashion when you guys lost such a difficult way to lose to Virginia in the Final Four, such a tough loss. But that poise and integrity, you had that as well. And I wonder if you recognize that in that moment, because again, you're so emotional as a coach, and yet there was a lot of poise and integrity there in the way that you handled that loss. Is that something that you kind of have learned to kind of work through over the years in your coaching? I mean, especially having not have been there before.
Well, I think it's completely revolving around my faith and my relationship with God. And as I've gotten older, it's grown, it's changed, it's evolved, but it's clearly a relationship. And I sort of felt in that time, first of all, there was a long walk to the locker room from that football field court. And I had some chance to think about how I was going to handle this, how I was going to handle my locker room. Your first reaction is definitely when a couple calls go against you at the end of the game. You're angry, and you feel like you feel potentially like something was taken from you. But really quickly, I understood that God may have put me in this moment right here to teach how this is to be handled. That while we bless Him in victory so often and give Him the glory and the credit, there was an opportunity to do the exact same thing in defeat when the news wasn't nearly as good, and trust that this was what He had in store for him. And we're grateful for just having had the opportunity. And then to understand that, just from a standpoint of listen, we didn't make some plays. They did make some plays. If we give an ounce of we got cheated, it takes away from what Virginia accomplished. And that is just not the way to go. And then I think the other thing too is, as a teacher and a coach, it's my responsibility to try to lead. That's why when we do fail and we make mistakes and we sin and we let a lot of people down, including those that we are trying to mentor and tutor. So that all came over me in a pretty clear walk back to the locker room and listen, if you don't have your locker room ready, if you haven't been in Bible study, if you haven't talked the talk and walked the walk, you can't walk into your locker room in those moments and explain to those guys the opportunity we have right now to handle this loss. That's something that those seeds have been planted all year long. And I was very, very proud of our young men for not completely, but by and large, being accountable and understanding of the outcome.
How do you think Bruce Pearl 25 years ago at Southern Indiana or Milwaukee would have been able to handle a loss like that?
I wouldn't have been able to handle it the same way, most likely. There are a lot of things that I would handle differently. And again, I do think it's just because of my relationship with God in the sense that I absolutely answer to him. And I hope, look, we're blessed. I'm blessed to bless. That I'm blessed to bless. And if I'm not blessed, I'm still going to bless. I don't know that I felt that responsibility maybe when I was younger. Yeah. I could tell you that maybe sort of like I maybe thought that it was my coaching or my teaching or my motivation or me. And it wasn't. It was him. Yeah. And, using me, utilizing me, and then therefore the responsibility. I mean, you talk about, like, people say, well, what about expectations? Like, wait a second. You think you can possibly expect more from me than my God and my Savior and my Lord? Good luck. I mean, good luck with that one. Yeah. And oh, by the way, I also don't answer to you. Yeah, exactly. So, I'll do the best I can. I will. And that's the standard I hold myself to. And as long as I'm giving, people say, Coach, can you sleep after a loss? And I'm like, yeah. Why? I said, because I'm tired. I'm tired. No, I may wake up in the middle of the night and think, gosh, I should have done this or should have done that. And if I'd have done that, maybe we'd have won. But so just doing the best you can.
Yeah. Bruce Pearl is our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast from Auburn. And you've mentioned your faith numerous times here, and I love that. Can you take us a little deeper into especially just kind of the transformation that's taken place in your life over the last few years and kind of what the Lord has done in your life and growing deeper in him?
Yep. And what I'll do before I do that is I'll ask people to forgive me because they may not agree or understand. Sure. And I don't want, my intention is to not upset anybody, but I'm going to be honest where I'm at, with my faith. I am Jewish, and I am so very proud and blessed to be a part of the Jewish people. Yeah. One of my great lines here in Alabama is, do you know who my wife's two favorite Jews are in Alabama?
Who's that?
And the answer is me and Jesus.
That's right.
And the point is, I am constantly, as a coach, trying to find ways to put people together. I'm constantly trying to find areas where we have common ground, because I know we can do so much more when we can respect and understand and appreciate where we're together and on the same page, and then where we're not, respect and tolerate each other's differences. And that's kind of where I'm at. And so I've never been comfortable with being the chosen people, if in fact we are. I've never been comfortable with Jesus saying the only way to get there is through me to get to him, because I've had a relationship with God before I knew Jesus. And so the my way or the highway aspects of religion are troubling to me. And I know at some point I'll get there and I'll have to answer to God for that. Yeah. And I'm prayerful, but for his grace, there can be life after for me. And you know what? Even if that's his plan, just like it was meant for me to not win that last game, I'm down with it. I'm going to love my Lord just the same. So the transition, where I kind of blend the Judeo-Christian side of things. My wife is Christian, and she's been just a wonderful for me, and my understanding, and the fact that we read the Bible together and we study together and we practice our religion together. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So my minister, John Wood, asked me this question. I think it's fast. I think you'll enjoy this. He said to me, Bruce, Jewish man, do you really believe that when Abraham brought Isaac up to the altar, do you believe he actually did that? And do you believe he was actually willing to sacrifice his son? And do you believe that God somehow provided another sacrifice for him, the ram? Do you believe it really happened? I said, I do. And he said, do you believe that God was a part of that? I said, oh my gosh, absolutely. Okay. He said, do you believe that Moses freed the Jewish people from slavery, that somehow a slave could free his people from bondage? And do you believe that he had God's help in doing that? I do. I absolutely do believe it historically, factually. It happened. Now, do you believe that Moses could have done that alone? No. Do you believe that Abraham did what he did alone? No, he did it with God. He walked with God the whole time he did it. All right, then let me ask you a question. Why would you find it so hard to believe, or would you believe, that Jesus could have done what he did by himself? And I went, oh boy, no, there's no way that this rabbi, who was not a king, who was not a warrior, who was not a wealthy man, his only power and influence was love and the word and the fact that God held his hand through. Yes, I believe that he's a son of God, and I believe that God sent him to save the world. And when I get there are going to be some questions as to, why there were some things that made it difficult for some of my people. But my point is this: my Christian brother, you and I are brothers.
Yeah, we
have the same God. Abraham is the father of all nations. So therefore, my Muslim brothers and the people that are in the Middle East that are hating on one another because of each other's existence, we're all family.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I've been, where I am. And I know it's uncomfortable to hear for some of my Jewish brothers. It's maybe uncomfortable to hear from some of my Christian brothers and, believing that I want to edit the faith. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I love the transparency, though, Coach, because I think this whole journey of faith, I grew up in a very Catholic home, but didn't go to church much, didn't really care. And then I never heard that word relationship. And you've alluded to that word quite a few times in our conversation, the relationship with God. And that didn't click with me until I was 26, 27, 28 years old in my life. And so I think it's been a journey, though, for me over the past 18 years of just seeking and trying to understand God and who he is and the word. That sounds like it's where you're at too. This is a process here and a journey that you've kind of taken. It's just become something that's a little more deeper for you, right?
There's no question that following and reading about Jesus's life and his love and his charity and the difference that he tried to make and what happens sometimes, and this is the hard part. In Judaism, we were really never taught to try and, quote, convert people. If you want to talk about conversion, that's a strong word about sort of changing somebody, to convert into something, as opposed to sharing the good news or what is the ministry. And it's not so much for me about saving people, which I think I understand that.
Yeah.
And so as a result, we really never shared and we never really promoted. And it's not that you weren't welcome to be Jewish. It's just that we didn't want to sort of put that on you or certainly force you. That wasn't part of, I don't think, a huge part of the gospel and the teachings of the Old Testament. I don't know. And if it was, and it is in there somewhere, then we didn't do a very good job of sharing it with all the nations. And so I'm glad Jesus came. I'm glad God sent him.
Yeah.
Because then Jesus was able to take God's word, God's relationship, God's love, and give it to everybody and anybody that wanted it. And I respect my Jewish forefathers for keeping the law and being the first, and of being willing to go through thousands of years of persecution just because of their faith in our one God. And yet then God saying, okay, I've got to do something here. This needs to be available to everybody. And then he sent his son, and it became available to everybody. And so I'm grateful for that. And yeah, I do. I'm able to talk to God more easily now because Jesus brought a different love and a different tolerance and a different kindness and a different goodness. Look, it's called mitzvah. In the Jewish religion, we're not guaranteed heaven. We're not. I think I think we have hope, but we're not guaranteed. But the way you get there is through prayer, through studying the Bible, through reading the Torah, and through good deeds. Now, I understand I can't do enough good to earn my way in there. I can't. But for the grace of God, I can't earn my way in. But right. There's nothing wrong with trying. There's nothing wrong with trying to do good. I want to try to do good, not for the reward. I want to try to do good because it's the right thing to do, even if the reward doesn't come my way.
That's good. Coach Bruce Pearl is our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. What were some of the rhythms, or what are some of the rhythms, spiritual rhythms, that you've helped implement into your life recently? You mentioned, your wife being such an important part of this spiritual journey that you've continued to take as we speak. But what are some of the ways? I know you mentioned Bible study earlier with the team, small groups, that type of thing. Tell us about those.
Yeah, just, you got to put your money where your mouth is. And I'm barking all the time, so I better walk the walk.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And so, yes, being in Bible studies and putting small groups together, sharing with other men, doing things with couples, choosing your friends, just trying to be better, trying to be more mindful about being a better husband and a better father, and staying away from the temptations of the world as best I can. And so I think then we're also, teaching, also by being able to openly talk about it in my locker room with my players, to be able to try to find a way to have them have the conversation and the understanding, look, in coaching, our fans expect us to win all the time. And I get that. And I never got into coaching to make money. I got into coaching because I love the game, love the kids, and love to teach. And, that was it. And then all of a sudden you get good at it, you win some games. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves making a lot of money coaching the game of basketball. That's not what we got this thing. That's not what we started, for, but it is for the ministry. It is. That's what this is for. That's the opportunity we have. And so, sharing it with the guys, is everything.
Tell me about the lessons you've learned now that you look back, and some of the difficult seasons of life that you've been through. Certainly some time in Tennessee that didn't end well, but some of the things in the seasons of life that you've been through, the adversity, maybe on the court, but even off the court, and how that's helped shape you and mold you into the guy that you are today.
Well, I just, listen, you can't worry about what all people think. People are going to believe, it's almost like political. You've got the left and you got the right, and you got the folks in the middle, and, the folks that are on either side of things are really, they're not going to move very far.
Yeah.
So, I worry about what some people think, but really people that know me, people that care about me. And I do accept a huge responsibility that when you make mistakes, you let people down, family down, friends down, your religion down, your people, so on and so forth. Yeah. I'm always just trying to put people together, trying really hard to call out raceism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and just going, come on now, this is not now. We're not always going to, but we got to be able to find a way to live in peace. We got to be able to find a way, families, children, we're just trying to live the best lives we possibly can. And the constant bickering, the constant fighting, the war, the stuff that goes on in Washington every day. God, these people, what do they think? It's a game of some sort? They think it's Game of Thrones. Are they watching too much television?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. What they don't accomplish in the name of whatever it is. It's crazy. But hey, I'm not having it in my locker room.
That's good.
It's not, and we're champions.
Last couple questions here, Coach, and thanks so much for your time here. This is more generic, I think, than anything in this question, but what's your definition of success? You've been around this game a long time, and I don't even mean success as far as maybe what the world looks at, but your definition of success and how you view success in your life. My
first thing that jumps out to me is my family, my wife and my kids, and and do the best you can there. And then the impact you having, on others and trying to get them to, be good, do the right things and live this life. And that for me, that would be successful, having that, that kind of impact, the light that shined upon you. But then the question is, what do you do with it? Do you make other people better? Like, are other people's lives better because I'm in it or helping them? Not how much better can I get? It's how much better can we get? How could I teach or inspire or impact, share, and then get others to do the same thing? And listen, I have to win enough games to keep my job. That's the nature. That's the reality. I get it. I love to compete, and I love to have a contest. And my gosh, when you beat teams like Bill Self's Kansas team, or Roy Williams' North Carolina team, or John Calipari's Kentucky team, and you have an opportunity to go up against great teachers, great coaches, great players, and you and your staff and you and your men are competitive and, in fact, sometimes even successful by victory. Wow. I mean, that's just awesome. It means so much. Not because you think so much of yourself. It means so much because you think so much of them. Yeah. And then you go, my goodness, and yet we were able to be victorious. So, I mean, I don't know. Those are just a couple of things that jump out when you talk about success.
No, there's always good stuff there. Last question, and this has been wonderful to have you a part of the show, Coach. What is the lesson that God is teaching you in your life right now? What are you learning from the Lord in the season of life that he has you in today? There's so much, it sounds like, but what are you learning from him?
Oh, how much I don't know. Just here's the last thing I'd say. And again, I forgive me and for listeners and viewers that I'm trying to figure it out. Okay. So but the deal is this. My dad, I could be mad at him. He could be mad at me. One of the greatest ways you can hurt somebody's feelings is to ignore them, to not pay them any attention. And so the message I like, again, going back to my dad, happy or sad, whatever, I'd break his heart if I ignored him. Right. And that's the thing. That's the message I want to say. God, just don't ignore the one that loves you more than anybody else. And then the ability to trust him, it helps you get through life and through the different stresses and the different challenges, so on and so forth. And then if you can do his work while you're figuring out how to do yours, you got something there. And so it's a message for people too, and in the sense that, don't ignore your neighbor. Don't ignore the one who is being ignored. Reach out, touch them. When you want to ask how somebody's day, don't ask the boss how his day is. Ask somebody else who never gets asked that question. And you have done something to that person on that day, if you truly mean it, that's special.
That's good stuff right there. He is Bruce Pearl, Auburn men's basketball coach. Coach Pearl, thanks so much. And I really appreciate the honesty and the transparency too, because none of us have it figured out. And I just really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing what you shared. Thanks so much.
Well, Jace, thanks for doing this. I mean, that's thanks for spreading this word out, and I appreciate it. I think it's great that we're able to do this, and I'm grateful that I live in a country where we can open about that and not be persecuted. So thank you.
Thanks to Bruce Pearl for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. I really enjoyed talking to Coach Pearl. I like that we were able to go in some of the places that we went on this podcast, and I'm sure some people listening might question where he is in his faith, and that's okay. I think he asked for forgiveness quite a few times and sharing his faith with us on the podcast. But that's what I loved about it. Listen, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not have it all figured out. And it's okay to ask questions. And listen, for so many years, I became a Christian in 2001, but I really didn't know or understand the decision I had made or fully put my faith and trust in God for a few more years after that, because I wanted to learn for myself who Jesus was and what he did on the cross and why he came and what salvation meant and what repentance meant, all these words. I wanted to learn about that. And so it's a process. And for Coach Pearl, he's on a journey. He's on a spiritual journey here. And I just thought he was great. I just thought he was really awesome in his answers and his things that he struggles with, things that he wrestles with, and the things that he believes. And so I'm curious to know what you guys think. Please email me, jason@sportspectrum.com. This was a podcast unlike any we've done here at Sports Spectrum, but I'm glad we did it. And I thought Coach Pearl was just a fascinating listen, a fascinating interview here on the podcast. So email me, jason@sportspectrum.com. Let me know what you thought of the interview. And if you have any other ideas for guests that you would like to hear on this podcast, man, include those too when you email me. Again, my email is jason@sportspectrum.com. We thank you for listening to this podcast. If this is the first time that you've heard the Sports Spectrum podcast, thank you for tuning in and checking out the interview with Coach Pearl. Hit that subscribe button on whatever app that you're listening to on the podcast. That would be amazing. You can subscribe to the podcast, never miss an episode. We've had almost 300, more than 300 actually, of these podcast episodes. And so there's so many other interviews that you can go back and listen to. But thanks for being here. We really appreciate you checking out and listening to the Sports Spectrum podcast. We're also grateful to our sponsors, Compassion International. For more information on how you can release a child from poverty for just $38 a month, you got to go check out their website, compassion.com/sportspectrum. Check it out, compassion.com/sportspectrum, and consider sponsoring a child today. You can check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook on social media at sports_spectrum. And definitely check out our website, sportspectrum.com. Lots of great content there on the intersection of sports and faith. Check it out. Make it a bookmark on your daily web browsing endeavors. sportspectrum.com. That's the place to go. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast. We love you guys. Have a great rest of your day.